is Channel 4 News. I'm Emily Mainberg.
And I'm Madison Benton.
And tonight's report will cover a very important topic.
Individuals have been reported to develop lesions, contort, as well as lose arms. They've been turning into a goo-like substance.
This disease has taken over much of the Pacific Northwest and has been documented as the largest disease outbreak ever recorded.
Oops, I forgot to mention we're talking about sea star wasting disease, not the apocalypse.
Sorry about that.
Sea stars are in kingdom Animalia, phylum Echinodermata, echino meaning spiny, derm meaning skin, class Asteroidea, order Forcipulatida, and family Asteridae. On the west coast, sea star wasting disease is affecting sea stars as far north as Alaska down south to California.
So here we have a leather sea star. So just a little bit about the anatomy of these starfish. That little spot right there is the madreporite. That's responsible for bringing in water to the body, which helps them move, so for locomotion.
So the water goes in that way, goes into the central disc.
And then goes down the radial canals.
Yes.
And then into the 2 feet.
Yeah, awesome. So that's kind of like their hydraulic pressure, how they're able to move and grasp prey because they are a very predatory species.
Here is their anus in the center on the dorsal side. They're also covered in, they'll look like they're fuzzy when they're in the water. We'll insert a photo here. And those are their gills, so that's how they actually breathe. These ones have 2 stomachs. Here's where the mouth is in the middle. One stomach can actually be ejected outside of their body and digest food outside. And then once it's ready, they can suck it back in. And here are all the 2 feet, so this is how it moves around. At the end of each arm, there's a little eye spot. So they have 5 eye spots. And they can't really see much, so the only thing they can see is lightness and darkness, and not really any moving, like quickly moving objects, so all very slow moving things. And as well as with these guys, if you rub the top and smell them, they smell like rotten garlic. Kind of a fun fact.
So Maddie, how do these sea stars reproduce?
So sea stars reproduce both sexually and asexually. Sexual reproduction occurs when the male releases his sperm into the water column, and the female releases her eggs into the water column. There they become fertilized, and they are free-living organisms. They have developed into larvae through metamorphosis. Once they have become fertilized and turned into larvae, they settle to the bottom of the ocean and they grow into adults there. Asexual reproduction occurs when a part of the sea star's arm, as well as the central disc, detach from the parent sea star, resulting in an individual sea star. An example of this fragmentation is seen in the attempt to control crown of thorns sea stars in the Great Barrier Reef. They tried to chop off the arms and kill the species, which only resulted in a very high spike in the population.
This is because sea stars practice autonomy.
Once the sea stars acquire the virus, this is what it may look like.
Today we're going into Vancouver Island University.
We will be meeting with Dr. Tim Goder, a professor in the biology department.
Hi, Stephanie. It always boggles my mind that given such an important marine-wide event up and down our coast, we still don't know something so simple as you would think as the cause.
Yeah.
And everybody, that's the one thing. What causes it? Why is it? I mean, there's been other instances of outbreaks, but nothing as severe as this one or as widespread on our coast. And so something is going on, and certainly there's been a very strong relationship between the virus and temperature, getting at the whole climate change and global warming thing. But does that occur in Alaska as well as Baja? So there's other issues besides just temperature. And what aspect of temperature? Is it because the pathogen increases its growth rate? Is it because the sea stars are more susceptible because of their immune system being compromised? The most likely possibility is that it is what's called a densovirus. But then one of the problems with that is that some of the sea stars that have suffered from it aren't testing positive for the densovirus. And so there's still mysteries as to the cause of the world's most significant mass mortality event in marine waters.
So Emily, which species are most affected by the sea star wasting disease?
Well, it looks like that the ochre star and the sunflower star are most affected, but it also looks like the morning star, the giant pink star, and the mottled star are pretty heavily affected as well.
Not only do we care about the biodiversity of these amazing species, but they are also renowned as keystone predators.
The decline of these keystone species will result in a massive shift in the ecosystem. What will that look like for us?
So, just for example, starfish, they really like eating sea urchins, as well as sea otters. But the sea otters only really eat the large urchins because they want their dive to be effective. So, the starfish are responsible for eating the smaller ones and the medium-sized urchins. Urchins are herbivorous, meaning they eat seaweeds. They really like kelp especially. So the problem with that is if the urchin populations aren't regulated, they will be decimating kelp beds. So they can basically just wipe out an area of all the kelp, leaving it like a barren, rocky substrate. And that wipes out the biodiversity in an area.
The problem with that is that you're creating huge ecosystem shifts because so many organisms depend on kelp for either food or refuge or all these other ecological factors too. So
here we are today at Deep Bay Marine Field Station.
My name is Deanna Ferguson, and I am the Public Education Lead here at Deep Bay Marine Field Station.
So how many sea stars have been affected in the aquarium recently?
Probably all of them. We have 3 touch tanks downstairs, and the middle tank is our sea star aquarium, and so that way kids can get their hands in there and get dirty. And we typically have about 4 species on hand. So we have our ochres, which come in the purple and orange coloration. We have our leather sea stars, and we have our mottled, and we actually had sunflower sea stars. Mm-hmm. And so we had quite a lot of species abundance and diversity in our touch tank up until the end of September. So we had about 11 purple ochres in our sea star touch tank, and right now we are left with probably 3.
According to Deanna, 64% of her sea stars have wasted in the aquarium.
Researchers estimate that 82% of West Coast sea stars have been affected by the virus.
So how contagious do you think the disease is? Like if we kept those in the tanks, like do you think it would be affecting the other ones in the tank? Or?
I think definitely.
Yeah.
As with our touch tanks that we've noticed is that as soon as 1 or 2 get them, it's like boom.
Okay.
And it's almost like we don't know exactly what causes sea star wasting disease. There's several different theories. Some think it's like a virus that acts like a flu.
Mm-hmm.
Some think it's now a microbe community that's acting against our sea stars. Always there, but now it's turning like something evil. So there's different theories as to what causes it. But I do know in a small contained area, if one gets it, it's like it wipes out the entire community. But it seems to be more species specific. So that in a touch tank in a contained area, maybe all the ochres would go.
Okay.
Because the leather stars seemed okay, same with the mottled. But again, these are questions that we don't have the answers to, which is pretty crazy.
Do you ever euthanize the sea stars, or if so, how do you do that?
We do not. Typically, when we look at our animal care procedure, which is very strict because we are an NSERC facility at BIU, most of the animal care comes towards vertebrates.
Okay.
So when we see sea star wasting disease, what we actually do is, we've been talking to different places like Discovery Passages in Campbell River, and they actually isolate individuals and try to rehab them. We don't do that. We kind of let nature take its course. If it is natural, we don't know. And so we only really notice our sea stars wasting. We'll see the lesions and we'll see if they'll survive that. And if they don't, then we find extra limbs and we put them in the freezer.
So Emily, you worked for the Yuki Aquarium last summer?
Yeah.
Great. And did you notice anything with sea star wasting disease in that aquarium?
Yeah, there was a lot of sea star wasting disease. In the beginning of the season, the purple ochre stars were most affected, I'd say. As the season progressed, the blood stars, the bat stars, the giant pink stars, and a few others, even the leather stars were becoming affected with the disease, a lot less than the purple ochre stars. We only had 1 sunflower sea star at the Yuki Aquarium, and that one wasted a couple months in as well, which was really upsetting.
And how do you think the public reacted to being able to see firsthand what it looks like to see a sea star waste?
Poorly, very poorly, especially with the kids. They would ask why the sea star looks that way, and then explaining to them that it has gotten a little sickness and it might not pull through, and this is what it looks like, and this is what it does, and this is how it may be caused. And just seeing the public's reaction, it inspired change, I think, because you could be anthropogenic, it could be caused by us, and I think that's the biggest part of this is just education for the public and letting them know what's happening and what's out there and what we could do to possibly change things.
Most definitely. How do you think sea star wasting disease will affect the ecosystems in the future?
It's going to be huge, definitely causing a whole different species shift and different species dynamics that are happening.
The removal by the sea star wasting disease of purple sea stars has caused mussels, for example, their preferred prey, to increase in abundance, and that takes up and crowds out other native species. So the presence of a disease agent having an effect on a keystone predator, you can see has these cascading potential negative effects.
It just shows that we have to change something in our everyday lives, because if it is anthropogenic and if it is related to climate change and the warming waters, then obviously gotta look back on ourselves.
Yeah. There's actually a very recent paper that's shown that in some populations, there's actually developing resistance to the sea star wasting disease, it seems. So if you Google genetics of sea star wasting disease in sea stars, it actually looks promising. There's actually some evidence that they can evolve to cope with the problem. And one aspect of the reproduction that's helping them with their comeback, if you will, is because they're such wicked broadcast spawners producing like literally millions of larvae per individual female. Their opportunity to recolonize an area that's been decimated is pretty high. And so that's the good news.
That brings us to the end of this week's episode. In conclusion, we've determined that there is no exact cause for sea star wasting disease.
But what we do know is that eventually we might have a population of sea stars that are not susceptible to acquiring the virus. So with more education and more research, we may be able to help with the regeneration of the sea star population.
We would like to give a big thanks to our guest speakers on today's show, Tim Goder and Deanna Ferguson from the Deep Bay Marine Field Station.